Welcome to this video where we will be looking at how to read text files using Java. And when you read the text file, you will populate an array list with objects. Then the objects will be instantiated using arguments from the file. Okay, so let's just start by looking at the text file that we're going to read. So our text file is structured like this. Each record represents an employee. A record in a file is just one line containing information that is specific to a specific instance of whatever is being recorded. In this case, we are recording patients. So one line of a patient here, it just represents a patient, with the name first, comma, the age of the patient, and then the weight of the patient, and then the illness of the patient. So what we have here is an example of how records in a text file can vary. I just made this on purpose. Okay, the first line is normal. Everything is looking fine. So this is the name of the patient. This is the age of the patient. This is the weight of the patient, and then this is the illness of the patient. So maybe one thing that I should highlight here that you should be very careful of, that you should always be looking for when you're looking at a text file or just a file, is how is your data separated, or what's the delimiter in the data. Like in each row, we know that we have one instance, but then in that row, we want to be able to separate the different values that are found in the row. Like for example, it's not a good practice to write something like this, Lerato 17 combined. Rather, we want to separate either using a space or a comma like that, or any other delimiter. It could have been a hash like that. So the hash should appear everywhere, like as a delimiter. But in this case, the choice for a delimiter was the comma. So the comma separates different values in each record. Remember, each record is just one line representing a single entity, a single instance of whatever we are trying to record. So in this case, our delimiter is a comma. And then the first line has got single values, like after every comma, we just have one value for everything. Same applies here. It's one value for everything, even though it looks like the illness part, which is the last one. Remember, the structure is the name, the age, and then the weight, then the illness. So here the illness consists of two words. But when we are reading this, it will be read as one value with the help of this delimiter here. So there is a certain class in Java called string tokenizer that will allow us to be able to separate every value in each line depending on the given delimiter, which in this case is a comma. So when we say name, the name will be the first part before the first comma. The age will be the first thing after the first comma. The weight will be the first number after the second comma, and the illness will be what remains on the last part. Same applies here. You see that Julian Trashler has got a name that has got the first name and the last name, and there is a space here separating that. Sometimes the space is used as a delimiter, yes, and it works. But in this case, our delimiter is a comma. So this will be read as one value when we are using our string tokenizer class. The string tokenizer class, again, is used to read some line of data, and then using a specific given delimiter, it separates the data for you so that all you have to do is just traverse the tokenizer and it gives you the value you want each time. So the fact that this last value is separated into different words, it's still just one value as long as it's after the comma. So the comma is our delimiter here. It's the comma that decides what value it is. Let me just put it that way. So without further ado, let me just get to the program part of it. So before we go to the program, as you look at the structure of the text file, it might happen in some situations that you have to read the text file and populate an array list with objects, but you're not given the structure of the class, but then you can derive it from looking at the records here. So what we have here, in each record, we have a name. In each record, we have an age. In each record, we have the weight. In each record, we have the illness, all in the same format, just that there's different values. So in order to be able to add objects into an array list, the objects with the values taken all from these records, what we do is create a class that will first define a patient. And then after defining a patient using that class, we'll then instantiate objects of the type or of the class patient. And then after instantiating those objects, we'll add the objects into the array list. So that's what basically we're going to be doing. Okay, let me show you the class for the patient. So this is the class for the patient. You may ignore the package name. It's not a problem. You'll have a different name in your program. It's fine. So in the patient class, we define the 4 attributes that we saw from our text file. So maybe this will be given to you usually, or you'll be expected to write it. It's okay. But either way, what the class should do, the class which defines each record there, like which defines an instance of each of those records you saw in the text file. Remember, a record is just one line containing information related to one object. So in that case, it's information related to one patient. Okay, so the patient class has got 4 attributes. The 4 attributes are going to be used to store all that information from one line for each patient. Then this is a constructor. The constructor will be used to instantiate an object of type patient using the information taken from the text file in each row. So each row has a full name, each row has an age, each row has a weight, each row has an illness. So we're going to take those values and then we define or we instantiate an object of type patient. And then for the last one, the object of type patient can then be converted into a string representation in which we just return the full name, the age, the weight, and the illness, all separated by the commas. Very simple. So this is in fact the format the information is stored in the text file. Although I just wrote that information like just by typing it directly to the file. So we want to be able to read the file, the text file at the end, instantiate objects, and then use those objects, store them in an array list for further use. Okay, so now I hope you understand the patient class. Let me just go through it again. It has got the attributes, each of which contains like a variable that will hold information from each record, like all those parts, different parts of each record. Each record is one line, remember. So we need variables that will hold each of those values of information for each record. And then this one is going to be used to instantiate an object after we read all those. And then we can just print, we can use this to print out the information just to show that we read the information correctly. Okay, I hope this is clear now. So there's the patient's text file, which has the patient's information. And then there's this class that defines a patient. And then now we go to the task of actually reading the text file and instantiating patients, then putting those into an array list. Okay, so here we go there. So you might notice that I've already written a lot of the things here. So I think in my in my learning philosophy, it's a personal thing, but I really encourage it because I think it's working. I encourage that if you find a program like this that's already pre-written, it's not a problem. You actually try and go through it and try to understand how it's working rather than seeing someone just typing it in front of you, which is normally good when you're new and just to get that kind of encouragement that, okay, actually it works. Like you can just type the code now and then quickly, everything is working fine. But at this point, when you're learning this kind of information that I'm like trying to share with you, I'm assuming that you're trying to really advance your learning skills also. So this kind of philosophy of learning like this, I think it's very important because it helps you to think rather than when you see something being done practically in front of you quickly, you feel like, okay, this is too easy. And then you just maybe feel like, okay, yeah, I'm not saying this is difficult, but I'm just saying sometimes I think this is a very good approach. Okay, now we are into the file that is actually, the Java file that we actually use to read the text file. So we first initialize an array list that will use, okay, for starting the patient. Okay, so I'm going to make this code available on GitHub like I normally do for the other videos. So I'm going to make this code available on GitHub so that you can run it on your own machine. I'll just provide the link as a comment. You just click there. You don't have to know much about GitHub. You just click there, you download whatever you'll see there, and then you run it on your machine. So we first initialize the array list that we'll use to store the patient object. And be careful here about our data type. It's not string, double, or what. It's patient. Why is the program, why is the IDE, or why is the compiler, if I should say, why is it accepting our idea of writing patient here as a type? It's because if you look here on our left-hand side, we are on the last package here at the bottom there, reading files, that package, that is where we are. So there's that patient file, there's that patient reader.java, and this is the patient file, and that is the patient reader.java. So those files are located in the same directory, and they can actually read each other. Let me just say briefly like that. They can see each other. Let me just put it that way. So we can use patient as a type in this file because of that reason alone. If you put the patient file in a different folder, then you get an error here. So please be careful when you're running those programs. Like you really have to understand that. Okay. Now we just define a method after initializing the array list to store the patient. We now define a method to read the patients from the text file and populate the array list. So the first thing here we do is just define the method and we say, okay, it's static, it's void, it doesn't return anything, and then throws IO exception. That's very important because we either use try and catch or say throws the IO exception. The reason for that is because when we do this line, the text file might not exist. Okay, but if it doesn't exist, it doesn't show the error here. It shows the error when you're trying to connect the scanner with the file. When it finds that the file actually does not exist. So in our case, we do have the file in our machine here, as you can see there. I hope you can notice the structure in terms of how you store, how you put your text file relative to your SRC folder there. You see, you can do this. You see, so it's the package, the outer package there, and that's our SRC folder, and then you have the packages, then the text files here. But you don't have to worry about this. If you can't put it exactly where it should be, just write a program that will write your text file. It will automatically place it where it has to be. Then you can edit the text file yourself. Okay, but that's not the point. So the point is that we are here. We first here, what we do here in the first two lines, let me just separate them. So I want you to go with me here. We connect, let me just say connect the program with the text file for reading. Yeah, so that's it. So this line creates a connection of the program with the text file. And then this scanner now, scanner is an object that we normally use for reading, a class that we normally use for reading, sorry. So the scanner now, the source, it normally reads something from the keyboard, right? So now the source for the scanner is the file, which is an object. It's an object. This object is a connection of this program and the actual text file. So the scanner is the one that's going to be reading. Then we get to the string tokenizer. Okay, I won't explain much about the string tokenizer, but I will show you how to use it. Then you'll be able to see from there how really it works. And then here what we do, which is very important as well, I'd like to keep your code clean, initialize the variables, initialize the variables that you will need to instantiate the object. In this case, a patient object. Okay, there's a lot of spelling mistakes. Instantiate. Yeah. Okay. So these are the variables that we'll need to instantiate our object, and then we just initialize them there, or we declare them. Let me just say that it's fine. Okay, although we've given them values, but it's sufficient to declare them. I'm just saying that. Okay, so in our while loop, there's this part. It says while read file dot has next line. So read file is our scanner object. Read file is our scanner object. So this method, what it does when called, it returns a boolean being either true or false, which states whether in the text file, is there a next line to read or not? If there is a next line, it will return true. If there isn't, it returns false. And when it returns false, the while loop halts immediately. Or it breaks. I mean, just say the while loop stops running. So what happens then is that if we have a next line, then we do this now. Okay. So this is the string tokenizer now in use. The token is equals to new string tokenizer. You specify as the first argument the line that you're reading, which in this case is one of those lines from the text file. It reads one line, read file, the next line reads the entire line. Okay, and then you specify on the right hand side the delimiter for that line. What is the delimiter for that information in your line? Let's go back to the text file. If you look here, you find that there is a value for each record. There's a value and a comma, a value and a comma, a value and a comma. So what we're doing here is that we're saying, okay, read each of these lines like one at a time, starting from the top to the bottom, one at a time. And our delimiter in each line is a comma. And then after doing that, what we do to access the values in the sequence order from left to right in each record is that we use this method. Now, use the information from one line to initialize the variables needed to instantiate the object. Yes. So now what we're doing here, we are initializing the variables needed to instantiate the object. Sorry, I keep using this word create. So here what we're saying is that, okay, the full name of the patient, because we want to instantiate a patient object here. So we're saying the full name of the patient is equals to token.nextToken. So now we're being introduced to a new method, nextToken. So nextToken applies to methods of the string tokenizer class. And our token here, this token, this one highlighted, is actually of type string tokenizer, as you can see at the top. So the nextToken method applies to those objects. And what it does is that from each record in the file or the current line that has been read, it just reads a value and then points to the next value that is readable in the same line. It doesn't go for all the lines, but it does one line at a time. And that line is exactly that line that you initialized your token with. So here we initialize a token, and after we initialize the token, it knows the line and it knows the delimiter. So when we say token.nextToken, it returns the first element in the line. And then when you say token.nextToken for the second time, it returns the second element after the first comma in the same line. Okay, then when it does that, we just convert that into an integer because we want that to be the age, as you can remember from our text file. Same applies for the weight. What it does is that we just say double.parseDouble, which means convert that string to a double. And what is that string? It's token.nextToken. And that token.nextToken is the third element because we have called nextToken 3 times. First time it reads the name, second time it reads the age as a string. That is why we have to convert. Third time it reads the weight as a string, then we convert to a double. And then the illness is also a string, so we just read it as is. So that's the illness over there. Now that we have initialized our 4 variables that we need to create a patient object, then we create the patient object here, we instantiate. That's the appropriate word. Please forgive me for keeping on using the create word. The right word is instantiate. So we instantiate the patient object there. And it has the values that we recently read on the file. And after instantiating the object, we just add into the patient list. And the patients list here is the one that we defined here at the top. See that? That is where we are adding our things. Let me check. Yeah, that is where we're adding. Thought maybe I touched something here. So the array list that we initialized here is the one that we are adding on in this method. So this method, we're inside the method here, and the method can see that that initialization because it's static. The array list is static. So yeah. So this is the process. Now what happens is that the process is repeated for all the lines. So for each line, these values will be initialized differently according to the values found in that line in the file, and this object will be instantiated differently depending on the values that were read in the line, and this different object will be added into the array list each time. Okay, so we can run this. Let's go to our output console. Nothing happens. Fine, we didn't expect anything anyway. We just run this again. Okay, nothing happens. Now, let me just say after reading the patients, we want to see if actually our array list has got the patients from the text file. Yes. So this for loop I'll use here for patient from this patient. Yes, this is called an enhanced for loop. So we can just say system.out.println patient Let me just leave it like this. Is something I want to test. Yeah, so it's working, you see? There we go at the bottom. We didn't even have to call the toString method here, because if you try to print an object, the compiler will look for the toString method in the class of that object. And luckily, when it looks in the class of patient, it finds that we have one, and then it just invokes that immediately. Sorry for that sound. Yeah, but you really, this is what it is. This is what it is. Just taking you through. What I'd like you to do first is look at the bigger picture. We have the patient's file. We define a class for each patient. We read each line. What's very important, we read each line. We initialize all the variables we need to instantiate an object. We instantiate the object. We add the object into the list. Then we traverse the list here and print out each of those objects. So after you have the array list, that is when you can do anything you want. But the scope of this video is just limited to reading the text file and populating an array list. You could read and not populate an array list, it's up to you. But for the sake of this one, this is where we are going to end. Thank you for watching the video. So what I'll do right now, we stop the video. So I will see you guys in our next video, where we will be looking at other concepts in Java programming, extending from these ones. So now we are getting a little bit more advanced. Thanks for watching the video up to this point. See you in our next video.